Ladies and gentlemen, we'll conclude this part of the entertainment with a brand new song sung here in Chicago for the first time on any stage by myself and company. Camptown ladies sing this song. Camptown breaks back by my song. I come down with my hat paid in. I go back home with a rifle in hand. Flying to run all night, flying to run all day. I spent my money on the pumping bag. Somebody bet on the day. You don't take Billy and the big black hog. Each line is track and the boat's got a chalk. The blind horse sticking in a big mud hole. And touch mine with a 10-foot pole. Flying to run all night, flying to run all day. I spent my money on a pumpkin bag. Somebody bet on the day.
I came from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. I'm going to Louisiana, my true love for the sea. It rained all night the day I left, the weather it was dry. The sun so hot I froze to death. Susanna, don't you cry. Oh, Susanna, oh, don't you cry for me.
Okay, hi everyone, and let me go back to the screen here, and we have a chat. And good morning. All right, so let me, so I don't forget, do the smart attendance, and we go to American history, and we go to attendance, and make sure that you can see the screen that I'm sharing. And so share screen, and we go here and go to smart attendance, and week 3 and smart attendance, and your number is 564. 564 is your lucky number, 564. And go back here and make sure I put in the number 564, and that's your number for smart attendance. And all right, so now what I was showing you at the introduction of the class before we started there was Al Jolson, who was maybe the most famous, one of the most famous Broadway singers and performers the early part of the 20th century, performing, and made his career largely while singing what's called in blackface, which is a form of entertainment, playing using the stereotype of Black people as being backward and ignorant. So if I can find it here, here is Jim Crow. Jim Crow is the portrayal of Black people as being ignorant, poor, and silly and fun. And this is an image of Jim Crow. And the reason I mention this is because you cannot, this was very popular in the US up until the middle of the 20th century, but you cannot be politically permitted to engage in blackface. Those people that you saw in that Al Jolson Camptown Racist song, those were all white people wearing black makeup, right? Black makeup and white lipstick and black wigs as caricatures of African Americans. And this goes back to what I was talking about earlier, how the stereotype of so-called backward people includes the depiction of them as being childlike, that they like to sing and dance. They're lazy, but they're fun. And as the justification for controlling them, because they are considered to be children who need to be civilized, like children need to be raised by adults. So similarly, these Black people need to be civilized, and of course, by being under the control of the white people, they are being civilized. This term Jim Crow refers to a character in theater, and then it was used as a term to refer to the segregation laws that were adopted in the United States, particularly after the end of slavery, obviously, until the middle of the 20th century, to segregate Black people from white people, to keep Black people separate from white people in terms of going to separate schools, going to riding separate buses or separate parts of the bus, segregation. And of course, there's another depiction of Jim Crow. These Jim Crow laws are those laws that institutionalize racial segregation and marginalization, because of course, in principle, this was legal in the United States. Jim Crow was considered legal. Separation and segregation was considered legal. But the claim was that you could have separate facilities for Black people, but they had to be equal to white people in terms of quality. That you could have separate schools for Blacks, but they had to be equal in quality for Blacks. And of course, they never were equal in quality. They didn't get the resources from the government. The government didn't allocate in their budget allocations adopted by the states or the local communities. They did not give equal resources to Black schools or black bathrooms or black water coolers where people could drink water. You know, these were all considered separate. And this was finally attacked and broken down and made illegal by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And earlier, segregation was ruled unconstitutional in 1954 in the US in Brown versus Board of Education, a Supreme Court ruling that said you could not have separate but equal schooling and schools for Blacks and white people. They had to be integrated. And but previously, this had been ruled legal in 1896 by the US Supreme Court in Plessy versus Ferguson, saying separate travel cars on railroads for Black and white people, separate but equal was legal. So the Supreme Court 60 years later changed its mind in Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. And so this racism is as a part of a US identity and US politics is critically important for understanding American history, because the racial conflict between white and Black people is not the only polarizing factor, but by far the most important issue of polarization in political conflict in the United States today. And it's fundamentally important for understanding the Donald Trump phenomenon, the political behavior of the political parties in the United States, because the Republican Party in the United States has become the party of white nationalism, of white identity. While white European Americans constitute roughly only 60% of the population, if that, in the United States, the other 40 or more percent are consider themselves not to be white Americans. So and this is reflected in stereotypes, and stereotypes, of course, are reflected in entertainment, right? People want to be entertained. They want to have their preconceived images in their minds about how you feel and perceive funny people that you were taught are funny, and then have that confirmed, for example, in blackface or Jim Crow type entertainment that was highlighted there in that video that I showed at the start of the class. So, but before we go on with that, let me talk about some other organization issues for our class, including the debates. So some of you saw or have noticed that I have asked you to sign up for a debate. So let me go to, let me go back to my drive and open up my Google Drive and open up the entertainment, the debate sign-up sheet, which I posted there on Google Docs, which I would like you to enter and type in your name where you select where you would like to be in, participate in a debate. So right now we're meeting online. I guess we'll stay online until the beginning of next month. And let's see who has signed up. Nobody signed up for debate this week, but let's see, is somebody else signed up? Let me see. Is anybody signed up? Oh yes, Jihye Zhang is signed up in week 10 as Khan, and Hebom Shin has signed up in week 11. So the rest of you also, the other 20 students in the class, you need to sign up for a debate. And you can see, can have up to 4 students debate per week. We'll do this on Wednesday, the last class of the week, during our 1-hour class. And if pro or con does not have an opponent because others didn't sign up, I will be the opponent. And we will have a debate and then vote online through this vote function on Cyber Campus as to who won the debate. And we will grade the debate as well. And the grading will be anonymous, but it's going to be something like what we did on Wednesday. You know, on Wednesday we had an in-class debate. We divided into groups. We will do that. Like for example, if nobody signs up for debate on Wednesday, which probably is unlikely that anybody's going to sign up for a debate on Wednesday for this week. We'll have an in-class debate on the basis of the paragraph topic, debate topic that you're writing is due tomorrow on this topic, right? The South Koreans, the leading motivation of the leaders of the American independence movement was to gain the freedom to make more profits. Pro or con? Is that the main reason why the American independence movement leaders fought their war? Because they want to make yet more money, and they thought the British were preventing them from making yet more money because of British restrictions? Or were they motivated primarily by a desire for freedom from tyranny? Of course, you know Howard Zinn's answer to, to that. And you know how Howard Zinn understands or argues that basically Americans are brainwashed to believe that the founding fathers were motivated by desires for human rights. But that doesn't include obviously Black people or indigenous people. So so we'll probably meet on Wednesday and have an in-class debate like we did last week. But in the future, as you sign up for these debates, we'll have students, 2 or 3 or 4 students engage in debate, or 1 student, and the professor engage in the debate. And we'll be a little more structured on that. We'll follow this format. And let me see if I can call this up here. And so you can see, I think you can see this. I'm a little bit, let me redo the share just to make sure you can see it. So here is the evaluation rubric that outlines this debate format. It's called the Lincoln Douglas format. You don't need to read all of this. I mean, I just wanted to show you that this Lincoln Douglas format for debating is considered the standard format for debates. And so, you know, the format that we use is that pro side of a debate topic will speak for 6 minutes in making their opening affirmative statement. Then con or negative will make their next statement for opening or their negative statement for up to 6 minutes. Then pro affirmative, in other words, rebuts for up to 4 minutes. And then the negative or con side rebuts and concludes for 7 minutes. And then the pro speaks at last, rebuttal conclusion for 3 minutes. And so affirmative pro speaks first and last 3 times, con speaks twice. And then we'll have time for questions during the debate on Zoom. And then I would like you to think about the quality of the debate in terms of the opening statement. Was it excellent, good, okay, not so good, limited, or bad, poor? The rebuttal, again, was it excellent, good, okay, not so good, poor? And then presentation style. Do the speakers speak well? Do the speakers provide audiovisual aids? Do the speakers make a PowerPoint presentation? Do they show Word documents, like I'm showing you this Word document here? Do they speak clearly. And so, you're going to all write paragraphs on the debate topics every week, right? So everybody's prepared for the topic, and of course the speakers, the debaters, will be prepared for the topic, and then of course you should also always use information from the course to support your argument, because you want the task in all communication, writing or spoken, is to persuade, to persuade, to persuade. You want to persuade your audience. You want to persuade your audience. So that means you have to understand your audience, and your audience, of course, are us in the class. So you can make a statement, but you got to prove it. You have to have evidence. So please use information from the Zinn reading to support your argument. You can do other research. You can find other sources. That's fine. But make sure you use the reading from the Zinn book, the textbook, because everybody's been studying that textbook. So everybody will know what you mean, because they are reading the same book that you're reading. Okay. And so that I'll post that on the cyber campus after class. I have to go get my vaccination after I'm finished here in this class, so I might be a little bit delayed because I want to get that done immediately. So I might not get this up until a little bit later this afternoon. Okay, so also I will also post this afternoon another file, and that is your midterm. Yay, your midterm. So let me open that up. And maybe make sure we do the share to make sure the share is working. And I think that's the midterm. Let's share. And yes, so this is your midterm, which is due the first draft on Cyber Campus in a few weeks, October 9, which is what, 3 weeks from this coming Saturday. And so it is, what you need to do first is read this attack on Howard Zinn. Daniel Flynn is a right-wing commentator, editor, and he hates a people's history of the United States. He thinks that Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States is propaganda, leftist, Marxist, communist propaganda, and he is really angry that Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, is the most popular textbook in American history in American high schools and college. And he's furious about this. And it's controversial. I mean, Donald Trump referenced and attacked Howard Zinn while he was president of the United States. So, and here is Daniel Flynn's attack on Howard Zinn. And of course, Daniel Flynn has a view that it's not just Howard Zinn is the problem. It's the entire teaching and academic field. The universities of America and the teachers that are trained in these universities are leftists who don't love their country, who are leftists who teach their children and brainwash their students into being anti-American and supporting the Democrats and supporting liberals who are weakening America's strength and determination to be a leader of democracy and freedom against first the Soviet Union and now against China. How are you supposed to resist communist China's influence in the world if you are taught that America is fundamentally racist, founded upon Jim Crow and Jim Crow laws and Jim Crow thinking? Who is going to fight for America if they're taught by teachers and college professors that America was founded upon racism and exploitation and colonialism? And so, he goes on here. I'll let you read this. It's not that long. And this was really controversial. And this has had a big influence in the United States. So, of course, you need some time to read this. And, it starts off, he starts off in this attack on Howard Zinn. Who is the most influential historian in America? Could it be Pulitzer Prize winners Arthur Schlesinger Jr. or Joseph Ellis or David McCullough, whose scholarly works have reached a broad literary public? The answer is none of the above. The accolade belongs instead to the unreconstructed anti-American Marxist Howard Zinn, whose cartoon anti-history of the United States is still selling 128,000 copies a year, 20 years after its original publication. Many of those copies are assigned readings for courses in colleges and high schools taught by leftist disciples of their radical mentor. So again, obviously Daniel Flynn doesn't like Howard Zinn, but what he also doesn't like is that people like me make you, the students, read Howard Zinn's book. I choose Howard Zinn as the textbook to use in this class, and you have to read it. So, and so his problem is not just with Howard Zinn. His problem is with academics in general, intellectuals in the United States in general. And so I'll let you go ahead and read this. And Zinn and Flynn, I should say, Daniel Flynn highlights what he says are the wrong statements in Howard Zinn. Like, for example, he claims that Howard Zinn states in his book, remember, this is supposed to be a history book, right? So it's supposed to have so-called facts. That in Howard Zinn claims that George Washington was the richest man in America at the time of the American Revolution, George Washington. And Flynn points out that no, that's not really the case. Washington was not the richest man. He was rich, but he wasn't the richest man in the United States. I'm sorry, in North America at the time of the American Revolution. That's one example. He points out how Zinn only emphasizes the bad things that white settlers did, European settlers did in North America, without talking about the horrible things that American Indians did to white people as well as to each other. And so I'll let you read this. And my question to you is, what are the significant differences between Zinn and Flynn? And what criticism does Flynn put forth of Zinn as a historian? And finally, as a Korean or Chinese student, because I think we have one Chinese student, everybody else is Korean. Which of these historians, Zinn or Flynn, would the current chief executive leaders of your home countries prefer? So for Koreans, obviously it's Moon Jae-in, and for Chinese, it's Xi Jinping. Who would they prefer you to have as your US history teacher? Would they want Howard Zinn or Daniel Flynn to teach you about American history? Whom do you think, Moon or Xi? If you're Korean, Moon, who would Moon Jae-in want you to learn American history from? Howard Zinn or Daniel Flynn? And why? If you're Korean. If you're Chinese, whom would Xi Jinping want you to learn American history from? Howard Zinn or Daniel Flynn? And explain why. Are their preferences different from yours? Do you think Moon's preference would be different from your preference as an individual student? And please explain why. And so, again, the first draft is due on Saturday, 3 weeks from this coming Saturday. I think it's 3 weeks from this coming Saturday, isn't it? Something like that. And again, no more than 10% of your midterm essay may consist of quoted text. It should be 500 words. That doesn't include the references, the title, your name, none of that. And you should use and cite information from the assigned class readings from weeks 1 through 7. In other words, you should use and cite information from chapters 1 through 12, because you're going to read through chapter 12 halfway through the semester up until the midterm week. So you can use and cite information from other sources, that's fine, but make sure you use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in the textbook. You can cite more, use more information, that's great, but make sure you use and cite information from at least 3 different chapters, from chapters 1 through 10, 12, 1 through 12 of the Zinn textbook. And then when you submit that that first draft to me, I will then use the track function. You see how that works? I'll turn on the track function here, and I will make comments on your paper like this. Okay, and then I will send this back to you, and you can, then we're going to, and then of course you're going to rewrite the paper, and then submit the paper on the final draft on Saturday, October 30th. And then I will put a grade on it. But in between then, on week 8, during the midterm week, I'm going to ask you to meet with me. We're going to meet to talk about my comments on the first draft of your paper. So you're going to send the paper to me by October 9th, and then I'm going to write comments and send it back to you. And then the week after that, during the midterm week, I'm going to meet with you individually, one-on-one, to talk about my comments on your paper on Zoom. We'll meet on Zoom. Okay. And, you can accept all changes or do that. And then, and so that's the plan. Okay. And all right. So anybody have any questions? If you have questions, you can always, ask or raise your hand on Zoom. And let me see, we have a chat. What's this chat here? Oh, okay, so any questions? And if no questions, let's go on here. And what else do I want to highlight here? Okay. All right, so let me open up a file. And let me see here. That's not what I wanted to open. Just a second. Okay. With that. And just a second here. So another exercise in this class. So let me send you this file. Sorry. Let me send you this file, chat, to everyone. And let's go through this file. So let me open up please turn on your video too, please, so that I can see you, so I can actually feel like I'm talking to human beings instead of just, boxes. So let me find the file here, and I want to send to you. And okay, so here you see. So I've sent you a PDF file. So click to open. And I already opened up, so please open up the file and let's go through this file. Colonial laws, how, Marxists emphasize, because Howard Zinn, is a Marxist. Marxists emphasize the objective interests of classes. Classes like workers versus industrialists and peasants, which are often in conflict with each other. Why don't poor people in the United States, including white and black poor people, and Hispanic and black and white poor people, why aren't they unified in opposing their exploitation by the rich and powerful? And we talked about, for example, how the Republican Party under Donald Trump, that's the party of white identity. People that have less education and therefore tend to have less money, less secure jobs, less profitable income, they tend to be more likely to vote for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Why do more educated people, white people, vote for the Democratic Party of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and less educated, poor white people support Donald Trump? Why aren't they supporting more socialist policies represented by the Democratic Party of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the United States that would help the poor people, including poor white people in the United States? And the majority of people who receive social benefits from US government in the form of social welfare policies like unemployment insurance and income support and medical care support, the majority tend to be white people. But in the places where Donald Trump did most strongly in the presidential election in 2020 and the previous one in 2016, in year 2020 and 2016 earlier, the places where he did most strongly were the places where you had the highest white poverty, the highest levels of white poor people, like West Virginia, right? I think that is one of the poorest countries in the United States. It's overwhelmingly white, and Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by like 20 percentage points. why are poor white people not aligning with poor black people to promote their and pursue their objective class interests? And this is an ongoing issue among Marxists. And they emphasize the power and use of policies by the ruling rich to divide the poor, keep the poor people from unifying, keep them divided in conflict with each other, so they cannot pool their political capacity, bring together the political capacity to take control of the government. And this, in other words, people had to be taught to be racist. From a Marxist point of view, many people in the United States, from the very beginning of what is today the United States, experienced brainwashing. That they were taught that they should hate each other and that they could feel good about themselves if you're a white person by saying, well, I might be a poor white person, but I'm not a black slave. And being black is bad. And even if I am poor and not rich, like the landowner who is rich, I can always feel good about myself by comparing myself to black people and believing that my economic well-being, wrongly, but still believing that my economic well-being depends upon black people staying out of power. That what I do have in this world will, even if it's not very much, will be threatened if black people become more powerful and influential. So I will ally with the white people and the rich white people like Donald Trump, even if I'm a poor white person. And Howard Zinn emphasizes how, that black people, white people, they had to be taught to hate each other. So in this handout I just sent you, Colonial Laws, here you see New Amsterdam. That was the name for New York when the Dutch founded it. They founded it, it was called New Amsterdam. And then of course the British Empire conquered it from the Dutch and it became New York. But the point is, even when the New Amsterdam, New York was founded hundreds of years ago, there was already the understanding that this is the place where you go to make money. And making money involves using slaves, enslaved laborers. You see a black woman here, you see black people, and you see this white merchant glorifying New Amsterdam, Neu Amsterdam, that means New Amsterdam. Wealthy white merchants such as these in 17th century etching of commerce in New Amsterdam, New York, feared any alliance among black slaves and poor whites. And still, the different parts of New York City still have their old Dutch names like Brooklyn, the Bronx, Harlem. These are Dutch names that I think were copied from Amsterdam. And some American political elites like the Roosevelt family, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, they trace their heritage back to these original Dutch settlers who founded this colony. And Stuyvesant and Rensselaer are also famous Dutch names of Dutch settlers that founded the area. So here they begin in this exercise, Christmas Day, 1520, on a sugar plantation owned by Christopher Columbus's son. So Christopher Columbus's son, Diego, enslaved Africans united and enslaved Taino Indians in the first recorded Black Indian rebellion in the Americas. They killed their white overseers, the white people that were overseeing them as slaves, and they ran away. So they did unify. They could unify at this early stage of European colonialism. In Great Britain's North American colonies, Black and Indian slaves and white indentured servants often ran away together. So the rich people, the rich merchants who wanted to make money in the North American colonies, they needed labor. They needed people to work for them. And one of the ways they would get people to move to North America and work for them was for the white people to basically, in England, sell themselves as, the term was indentured servants. People that were like, in effect, white slaves, but they were not really enslaved. They were obligated to work for 7 years. The term was 7 years, to work for the merchants who paid for their travel across the ocean from England and Scotland. These white people, rich white merchants, would pay for them to come to North America, pay their costs of their travel, give them food and a place to live in return for them working for a period of time, like was typically 7 years, for no pay. So they're something like enslaved white people, but they still had rights. You couldn't treat them the same way you could treat black people. They couldn't be abused as much as black people or indigenous people could be abused. But they could also run away. I mean, North America is huge, right? And so that was a continuing problem. They enslaved Indians, black people, and Indians could run away as well. But black people, it's harder for black people to run away because they look black, right? So eventually these indentured servants, they would fade. They're still referenced in the Constitution of the United States at the end of the 18th century. But by the end of the 18th century, indentured servitude was pretty much gone for white people. But slavery would continue, at least officially, until 1863. So throughout the history of early America, white ruling elites worried about what blacks and Indians might do if they got together. The people with property were also concerned about uprisings of white indentured servants, poor whites, and enslaved blacks, as occurred in 17th century Virginia in Bacon's Rebellion. So Bacon's Rebellion was the first instance in which you saw poor whites and blacks and enslaved blacks, poor whites and enslaved blacks unifying in rebelling against the rich merchants dominating the colony of Virginia in Bacon's Rebellion. So let me go to Google here, to Wikipedia, and type in Bacon's Rebellion and see what comes up. And Bacon's Rebellion, so let me make sure I'm sharing that with you. Share screen, and here you see Bacon's Rebellion on Wikipedia. And it was an armed rebellion led by Virginia settlers that took place at the end of the 17th century. It was led by Nathaniel Bacon against current colonial governor William Berkeley. It was the first rebellion in North American colonies in which discontented frontiersmen took part. A somewhat similar uprising occurred in Maryland involving John Coode and Julius Fendel, which took place afterwards. It says here, the alliance between European indentured servants and Africans and a mix of indentured, enslaved, and black and free black people disturbed the colonial upper class. So you see here this statement that there was unity, there was cooperation among black people and white people in rebelling against the rich merchants dominating the colonies. And they responded, these rich merchants responded by hardening the racial case of slavery in an attempt to divide the two races from subsequent united uprisings with the passage of the Virginia Slave Codes of 1705. Oops. While the farmers did not succeed in their initial goal of driving the North Americans from Virginia, the rebellion resulted in Berkeley being recalled to England. So they were also rebelling against the Indians, but the point is that blacks and whites did unify. And so let me go back to the Zoom file I was showing, the other file I was showing you, if I can here. And okay, so here we go. Okay, so conditions were different in different colonies, but everywhere people who had some wealth wanted to make sure that no one took it away from them. So below are a number of specific problems that colonial legislators faced. Try to predict the laws they passed to deal with these problems, and protect their privileged position. So the rich merchants wanted to protect their condition, their superior authority, and their privileged position. And maybe this is a good time to make an important point. It's human tendency to believe that what is legal is right. I'm not saying it's true for everybody, and I'm not saying it's always the case, but overall, people tend to believe that what is legal or illegal, if something is legal, it's okay, it's good. If something is illegal, it's bad. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that by passing these laws, white people are taught that they are superior to black people and they should never unify with black people. So some laws may deal with more than one problem, and some problems required several laws. Sometimes legislatures passed no specific laws, but white leaders promoted general policies. For each problem, except number 4, come up with at least 3 laws or policies. Some require more than others. Okay, so let's talk about those those problems. And again, let me share with you another file. And so I've sent you another file. So click to open that file and make it a little bit bigger. So here's, well, 5 problems, 1, 2, 3, 3A and 3B. So there's 5 problems here. Here are the problems. At times, Indians would attack white settlers on the frontier, kill them, and take their slaves. In parts of North America, enslaved Black people and Indians greatly outnumber whites. If Blacks and Indians united, they could crush the white rulers. Predict the measures that were taken to keep Indians and Blacks from uniting, or that may have even made them to feel hostile towards one another. Problem 2, some white indentured servants, along with enslaved Blacks, escape from their masters. Predict laws or policies adopted to discourage white indentured servants and enslaved Blacks from running away together. 3, Black slaves, indentured servants, and even some poor but free whites organized together to threaten rebellion. Predict how poor whites and white indentured servants were taught to believe that they were superior to and didn't have anything in common with Blacks. 3B, predict how Blacks and whites were kept separate so that whites would not even imagine getting together with Blacks. 4, or this is the 5th problem. In some areas, there were not enough whites to supervise enslaved Blacks. This made rebellion more likely. In some colonies, there were not many poor whites or indentured white servants in relation to the number of enslaved Blacks. Predict the measures adopted to ensure that on every plantation, there were enough white overseers in relation to Black slaves. How might white owners have found more white indentured servants to help supervise Blacks? So there's 5 problems there. And what I want to do now is assign you to 5 different groups. And let me see this. Yeah, okay. Assign you to 5 different groups. And let me go back to the Zoom here. Okay. And just randomly assign you and rename this as problem 1, rename this as problem 2, just a second, I'm assigning you to groups here, rename and sorry. Okay, and then open, and then you're all in these different groups here, and then ask you to address those 5 different problems. So room 1 is problem 1, room 2 is problem 2, room 3 is problem 3A, there's problem 3B, and then there's problem 4. And let's see who's going to speak for the group. So let me speak first for each group. And flip a coin, and it's the top 2 if it's heads, and it's heads, and it's the top 1 if it's heads, and it's heads. So the first person, each group will speak first for each group. So please talk with each other, and let me open all the rooms. Please, yes.
We can't see the people on the list, so if you want to designate us.
Okay, go ahead and join your groups.
Professor?
Yeah.
Actually, I attended this class with 2 different computers because of the microphone problems. But you attend me as one computer as a 3A room and another one as a 3B room.
Choose one.
Choose one?
Yeah, okay, you're in 3A.
Then
You're in
okay,
3A.
I go to 3A.
Okay, 3A. Okay.
So can you just that another one, this speaking one to the 3A room too?
Yeah, you don't have to join 3B, join 3A,
Okay.
because you all have to join your groups. So please join your groups.
Actually, I joined the group, but the joined one is
You join
the
3A.
yeah, I joined it, but I can't speak in that room because that computer's microphone is not available.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you then. I mean, then we're going to let, you have to join 3B if you have to, if you have computer problems. But okay, so if you want to speak. All right, so please collaborate, communicate with each other, and help each person speak for that group. Okay, speak for the group on those different questions. And again, I think you can see my share screen. So you can see the screen now, right? And you have the file. So problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, problem 3B, and problem 4. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. Predict what legal measures, what laws will be adopted to achieve these objectives, these bad objectives.
Okay, but once again, Professor,
Yeah.
I'm actually attending 2 different computers, so one can only show my screen, only camera is available, so I cannot speak or listen with other group members now.
Okay. I don't know what to tell you.
So can you just send this account to the 3A room?
I don't think I can.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking at it and it won't, let's see, maybe. Okay, I did. Okay, you're in 3A.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So Kim Won Sok, are you helping Kim Won Sok prepare?
Yeah, replacement right now.
Okay.
합의하거나 그러지 못하게 하기 위해서
저희가 3A 해야 될 것 같아요.
Owen Tech, are you getting assistance?
Pardon me?
Are they helping you? Is Ihwan and Ji-Hwan Yu help? Are they helping you?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
타인들
Yes, Owen Tech, how can I help you?
Uh, just a second.
Actually, Professor, we don't know what do we should talk about the 3B.
Okay, let me go back and look at that file there and let me see here. As I'm trying to manipulate myself around the file there. So okay, so let me, your 3B.
Yes.
So predict, it says here, predict how, let me share screen. Predict how blacks and whites were kept separate so that whites could not even imagine getting together with blacks. So the point here is about imagination. How do you persuade white people that being equal with and integrating with and interacting with black people, it's not even something that it's emotionally wrong. It's wrong. How do you make people understand at the level of their fundamental identity that it's wrong for black people and white people to get together with blacks, like marry them, have children with them, treat them, not to mention treat them equally? I mean, I should tell you, until 1967, so 5 years after I was born in 1962. So until 1967, 37 states of the 50 United States, 36 states of the United States of America had laws forbidding black people and white people from marrying each other. It was against the law for a black person to marry a white person. You could be fined and go to jail. As late as 1967. If you have those kinds of laws where it's, like I said, people tend to assume that what is illegal is wrong and what is legal is good, even though it's not really so simple, right? So if you make marriage between blacks and whites illegal, the notion that they should cooperate closely together and work together to advance their interests, I mean, it's just something emotionally. I mean, these laws, they're called anti-miscegenation laws. You should not mix races. Now, if you mix white DNA with African DNA, it's disgusting. It violates the laws of laws of nature, and certainly God doesn't like it. So I sort of gave it away, right? Make marriage between blacks and whites illegal. Make having babies between blacks and whites punishable by fine or illegal. If something on such a personal level, right? Now keep in mind, this is the frontier. This is the early days of the American colonies. There are not a lot of people to start a family with, right? It's dangerous. Most of the people around, many of them are often Indians and black people. You would think it would be normal for blacks and whites to get together, Indians, blacks and whites to get together. But I mean, even for me, people my age, this notion that blacks and whites should get married, it's still something, even, I'm 59, so I'm an older man. But because I was born in the 60s, there's still something in my head that, like if I were to hear, for example, that one of my relatives in my family, maybe my cousins or nephews, or that they were dating a black man or a black woman, something in my heart would be afraid. I know people older than me would say no. But that things change. The news reports in the U.S. claim that today, among younger people, it's not considered a major issue for blacks and whites to date. But and Barack Obama, his mother was white and his father was a black man from Africa. But for a lot of people in the US, still older people in particular, it's just considered to be wrong. Does that help? So that's one idea for laws. Here's another website, anti-miscegenation laws in the United States. These are laws that forbid marriage between different races. So these were the states, the old Confederacy, the states that tried to break away to form a separate country in the American Civil War. They had laws on their state constitutions forbidding blacks and white people from marrying each other. These were overturned in the green states before 1888, and these were overturned in between 1940 and 1967. Yeah, in the United States, anti-miscegenation laws were laws passed by most states that prohibited interracial marriage and interracial sexual relations. And for a lot of people, this was considered to be normal. Like Bob Jones University is a controversial place in the United States. They're a conservative evangelical university in South Carolina, in the South. And I think it says here until 2000, they forbid interracial, yeah. It says here on February 2nd, 2000, then Texas Governor George W. Bush, as a candidate for president, spoke during school's chapel hour. Bush gave a standard stump speech making no specific reference to the university. His political ones quickly noted his non-mention of the university's ban on interracial dating. So this university, until 2000, forbid blacks and Asians and white students from dating each other. Bob Jones University. A Christian, religious university. I actually know somebody that went there and studied there as a student. He got a degree in accounting. He said they have one of the best undergraduate accounting programs in the country. I think they've rejected those policies or rules, but the point is that they were in place in a lot of different places in the United States until relatively recently. Okay, so let's go back to our rooms and close all the rooms. Okay. So Problem one. So we had Kim Won-suk. What did your group come up with with regard to suggestions for meeting these objectives of the rich white merchants? Group one. Predict the measures, it says, that were taken to keep Indians and blacks from uniting, or that may have even made them to feel hostile toward one another. So Kim Won-suk. Kim Won-suk, are you there?
Yes. I thought a way to make black people the special enemies of the Indians. For example, hiring a black person as a service in a territorial conflict between white and Indians is to instill a bad image on black people.
What does it say here? It says here on this file, in terms of other things that were done. Let me close some of these files here. It says here, predict the measures that were taken to keep Indians and blacks from uniting, or that they may have even made them to feel hostile towards one another. As one white Carolinian poet put it, somebody who lives in North or South Carolina, we need a policy to make Indians and Negro. Can you see that? I gotta make sure you can see that. Screen share. As one Carolinian put it, we need to make a policy to make Indians and Negroes a check upon each other, lest by their vastly superior numbers, we should be crushed by one or the other. Laws were passed to prohibit free blacks from traveling in Indian territory. Treaties with Indian tribes required the return of fugitive slaves. So if black people as slaves ran away from their master, ran away from those who owned them and went to Indian territory outside of the colony, the Indians would turn them over because the Indians had signed a treaty with the colony to turn over escaped blacks. And again, that becomes part of the law. It becomes part of the policy in the law. Again, and this is an important point. It was even made today when I was listening to the radio, right? That if you act in a certain way long enough, your thinking will start to come into fit with your behavior. So if you act in a way to turn over black people who run away to escape slavery, and you capture them as Indians and hand them over and get a bounty, a prize for that, you are going to view black people as bad if you're an Indian, because you're making money off of returning black slaves running away. You understand? So this is an important point. People say, well, why do we want to focus on law? Adopting the right or wrong laws doesn't address all of our problems. But if you adopt laws, you can actually over time shape how people think and behave and believe. If you adopt bad laws, people will think badly and learn bad attitudes and make them part of their unspoken, unconscious thinking. Remember, we pointed out, right? At first, blacks and whites would unite against rich merchants, but they had to be taught to hate each other. That way, the poor people stay divided and stay politically weak. And that's an ongoing issue to the present day in 2021, people like Howard Zinn would say. Do you have any other suggestions? Anyone else from group one have any other suggestions as what might be done? In group one, anyone else? Someone, oh, what else was done? Let me go back to the document. It says here, in a 1683 New York law made it a crime for Negro or Indian slaves to meet anywhere together in groups of 4 or more, or to be armed with guns, swords, clubs, staves, or any other kind of weapon. A 1690 Connecticut law forbid Indians and blacks from walking beyond the town limits without a pass. Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts all had a 9 p.m. curfew for blacks and Indians. A 1773 law, New York law, was passed to prevent Negro and Indian slaves from appearing in the streets after 8 at night without a lantern with a lighted candle in it. So you keep profiling them, highlighting those people, emphasizing how black people and Indians, even though they're both poor, they should hate each other, particularly if you want to keep them divided. Whites often hired, it says here, whites often hired local Indians to hunt down escaped African slaves. In 1676, Maryland offered rewards to Indians for capturing black runaway slaves. In 1740, South Carolina offered Indians 100 pounds for each slave runaway captured alive and 50 pounds for every scalp of a grown Negro slave, you know, the hair. You know, if a slave is killed, cut off his skin here, and then the slaves would realize if they run away, they could be killed. In 1729, South Carolina hired Catawba Indians to recapture, kill enslaved blacks who had rebelled in Stono, South Carolina. It goes on here. These are all laws that were adopted during the colonial period. In 1725, South Carolina outlawed bringing any black slaves to the frontier. As a British colonel said, the slaves talk good English as well as the Cherokee language and too often tell falsities to the Indians, which they're apt to believe. A large number of Indians were sold as slaves to the West Indies. That means Jamaica, the islands of the Caribbean. In a single year, over 10,000 Indian slaves were whipped in chains or shipped in chains to the West Indies from the port of Charleston, South Carolina. The British sent black troops. I mean, that was the point. If the Indians didn't cooperate, they could be enslaved and sold away from their homes. The British sent black troops to fight the Natchez Indians in the Yamasee War of 1715. In New Orleans, the governor sent armed blacks to massacre Cochutious Indians. The British encouraged the so-called 5 civilized tribes, the Cherokee, the Creek, the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, and the Seminole, to enslave Africans as whites were doing. Ultimately, slaves made up between 10 and 20% of all 5 groups but the Seminoles. The Cherokee adopted a slave code to prevent blacks from learning to read and write and provided that if a slave ran off, other tribe members were obligated to catch the runaway. Slavery contributed to the inequality within each Indian nation. Only a relatively small elite of 12% of the Cherokees owned slaves. So the Indians learned about slavery and keeping blacks as slaves from the white people. Okay, room 2. And make sure I don't do this wrong here. And room 2 is Kang Tong-un. Your first room for problem 2. What did your group come up with?
First of all, we're talking about if slaves run away, they would be got a strong punishment, such as physical punishment or joint responsibility. Also, the living space of white people and slaves would have been separated to strengthen the surveillance of slave groups. For example, white police supervised the black church. And also, furthermore, government gave up penalties for runaway slaves and servants, regulated their movement, identified multiple offenders, and provided reward for their capture.
Okay. And so here, it says here in this file, predict the laws or policies adopted to discourage white and Indian servants and black slaves from running away together. A 1661 Virginia law provided that in case any English servant shall run away in company of any Negroes, he would have to suffer extra years of servitude to the master of the escaped slave. So if a white indentured Englishman ran away with a black person, he would be penalized with more indentured years of indentured servitude. Remember, and it's not that difficult to run away. right? I mean, this is North America. So you need to get the Indians involved to help you capture these people. Okay, problem 3A, and let's see, let's go to group 3A. And 3A, so that's Kim Tong-yoon. What did your group come up with?
Yeah.
Kim Tong-yoon.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we thought that white people were taught to be believed anyway they are white and just indentured. So poor whites and white indentured were more like hired, and black people are exploited. So unlike black people, they were slave under contract, and there will be a definite difference between poor whites and black people.
Yeah. Yeah. So it says here, all whites under this predict how poor whites and white indentured servants were taught to believe that they were superior to and didn't have anything in common with blacks. All whites were encouraged to believe that they were superior to blacks, and laws were passed and underscored their superiority. For example, a 1723 Maryland law provided for cutting off the ears of any black person who struck a white person. A Virginia colonial law sentenced whites to 25 lashes with a whip for stealing a pig, but increased to 39 lashes if the person were black or Indian. Poor whites were enlisted to hunt down runaway slaves and were put on slave patrols. So, that's a point made today a lot, that lots of poor white people, they join the military and they join the police, and they are being used to oppress poor black people. A 1705 Virginia law required that when a white servant's period of indenture was over, a master must provide men with 10 bushels of corn, 30 shillings, and a gun, and women with 15 bushels of corn and 40 shillings. The freed servants were also to be given 50 acres of land. Of course, the slaves didn't get anything like that. They were slaves. They couldn't be free. After Bacon's rebellion in 1676, amnesty was given to whites, but not to blacks. And white servants were given numerous advantages not given to black slaves, including the right to testify against their masters in court if they were not treated properly. So white indentured servants, they still had legal rights. Like they could testify against their controllers in court for crimes. Okay, group 3B, problem 3B. And let's see, who is in 3B? And 3B we have Own Tech. What did your group come up with for problem 3B? Own Tech. Predict how blacks and whites were kept separate so that whites would not even imagine getting together with blacks.
The level would have failed and the punishment for blacks would have been even greater. It would also happen prevent blacks from gathering among blacks to prevent them from leveling again.
Yeah, this is more personal though. This is more personal. And I think here's an example of what was adopted. A 1691 Virginia law provided that any white man or woman being free who shall intermarry with a Negro, mulatto, or Indian man or woman, bond or free, shall be banished, expelled from the colony. Virginia, Massachusetts, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, the Carolinas, and Georgia all passed laws prohibiting interracial marriage. And like they stayed in effect until 1967. Not in Virginia, but like Georgia and the South, Carolinas. In Southern colonies, according to historian Joseph P. Cullen, if a white female indentured servant had a child by a black man, she would be punished by public whipping and her period of indenture would be doubled. Okay. So this is, when you make romantic love relationship, marriage illegal, punishable by torture. Soon people just can't even imagine. It's just wrong. Blacks and whites cannot mix with each other in this teaching through law. Okay, and group 4, it says here, predict the measures adopted to ensure that on every plantation there were enough white overseers in relation to black slaves. How might white owners have found more white indentured servants to help supervise blacks? So they make the point here, in some areas there were not enough whites to supervise the enslaved people. And so rebellion seemed more likely. So group 4, problem 4, you are Pak Chung Yeon. Pak Chung Yeon, what did your group come up with?
Okay, we talk about how find more number of supervisors to manage black slaves. There are some opinions, and we thought hire white criminals and amnesty them, or let the black slaves manage with white servants, because white servants are anyway white servants also white servants. So by force, let the black slaves marry with white people. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we have here, what does it say? Predict the measures adopted to ensure that on every plantation there were enough white overseers in relation to black slaves. How might white owners have found more white indentured servants to help supervise blacks? So it says here in 1698, South Carolina passed a deficiency law that required every plantation owner to have at least one white servant for every 6 male adult black slaves. As Howard Zinn points out in chapter 3, servants were acquired from Great Britain and later from Ireland and Germany by lures, promises, lies, by kidnapping. Kidnappers would sell servants to the highest bidder in the American colonies. And in 1717, the British Parliament made transportation to the American colonies a legal punishment for committing certain crimes. So if you committed a crime in Great Britain, transportation to North America was a punishment. Tens of thousands of convicts were sent to Maryland, Virginia, and other colonies. And after the Americans broke away from Great Britain, this was used to populate Australia. So Australia became the main focus for transportation of British criminals as a way to get labor there, white labor to Australia. So this is how people are socialized or brainwashed in America to this day, according to people like Howard Zinn, to refuse to recognize or understand their objective class interest to unite together against the rich and powerful. And this is an ongoing problem. I mean, you can't understand Donald Trump and his coming to power unless you understand white nationalism. And why is it that poor whites are more likely to support Donald Trump than wealthier, more educated whites? When you would think poor white people have more in common with poor black people than they do with people like Donald Trump. And this shows, of course, then this is an image highlighting how Americans were taught during the American Civil War, 150 years later in the 19th century, that the first person killed fighting the British was a black man, Crispus Attucks. And this is propaganda of the North, as the North is getting ready to fight a war with the South. The southern states are trying to break away because they want to protect slavery, keep slavery. That in this mobilization of white people in the North to fight this war, they are pointing out that in this propaganda that it was a black man who was the first one to be killed in fighting the British in the Boston Massacre. And again, we'll talk about the American Civil War later, but the point is to try to overcome American white hatred of black people that they were taught from the beginning of the colonies. Now you have to try to persuade white people how the Civil War and fighting against the South is good for a number of reasons, including that we should feel bad about slavery and the treatment of black people in the South, even if they're not equal to us. So this is from propaganda from the Civil War time, leading up to the American Civil War by the North, talking about their history 140 years earlier. Okay, and so let me stop share and open up the cyber campus to see what I have here set up for voting and exercises today. And I have to re-sign in, log in, and close these extra notifications in American history and vote. Let's see what I have set up here. Oh, no. All right, so we have nothing really set up there. So we can go back now to the notes for today. And let me open up some more files here. Just let me have a second here to open up some more files. And okay, so let me see what I want to focus on here. So Americans are taught. Let me make sure I share the screen. Share screen. That people like the founders of the United States, like George Washington and others, are living gods, basically. But these are the founding fathers is their term. And so this is a news report from a few years ago about a dispute in San Francisco. Those of you who know something about the United States understand that San Francisco area of California, where Nancy Pelosi is the congressional representative and Speaker of the House of the Democrats. She represents San Francisco. San Francisco is the most leftist area focused center of the United States. There you have the strongest leftist movements in the United States. And there's a dispute underway about how to teach American students in San Francisco in the schools about the truth about what happened to them under the founding of the United States and its domination by white people who often were slave owners. And in the San Francisco schools, in this area, of course, is the Bay Area, where there's lots of internet companies, where Twitter and other Silicon Valley corporations are located. These are very prosperous communities, generally speaking, with a lot of money for their schools. And the issue came up in that in one of these schools there is a big mural painting of the reality of life under George Washington. So let me see if I can show you what's on what they're talking about here in these school pictures. So this is let me see if I can show it to you. See if I can show you this screen here. And what happened? It's not working. Should work. Well, it's not, seems to be, there's something wrong with the CNN website. So let me see what I can do about it. Well, I guess maybe if I go to YouTube, I'll just go to YouTube and see if that works.
The latest target in the culture war that has brought down Confederate monuments is a high school mural. This 1,600 square foot Depression era mural in San Francisco's Washington High School depicts the life of George Washington. It was painted in 1936 by Russian artist Viktor Arnatov a communist who was highly critical of America's history of racism. In one panel, Washington directs gun-carrying colonists westward past what looks to be a slain Native American. In another, Arnatoff depicts Washington negotiating with a slave owner and slaves working at Washington's Mount Vernon estate. The fresco has been criticized by an ad hoc committee of students and others who say it, quote, glorifies slavery, genocide, colonization, manifest destiny, white supremacy, and oppression. A meeting on the topic devolved into a screaming match.
I'm a licensed psychologist. The trauma is real. Why don't you believe the trauma is real? Why don't you believe the trauma is real? Why don't you believe the trauma is real? Our daughter can't go there.
The school board voted 6-0 to get rid of or cover the mural. To do so will cost upwards of $600,000 before court costs, but a petition signed by more than 400 academics and educators urges the board to reconsider. Joining me now to discuss is Willie Brown, the former mayor of San Francisco. His daughter attended Washington High School. He wrote a column in the San Francisco Chronicle about the dispute entitled "The New America, Those Who Yell Loudest Win." Mayor, how do you see it and why?
Well, it's frankly, I don't understand why anybody would not want the actual things that occurred in this country to be appropriately depicted for educational purposes. There's no other way to get the discussion going. And that's exactly what Anatol had in mind when he so displayed the horror of being part of Washington's slave net.
And one of those who was shouted down was a guy with the best body of knowledge about the artist who wanted to explain where he was coming from. Am I right?
That is exactly right. You got to know that in this country, when you talk about taking away a statue of Robert E. Lee, that's one thing. But removing a demonstration that constant in the country as
admirable aspects. Talk about a teachable moment. Is this a fight among liberals?
It is at the moment. It's a fight among liberals. But then again, you cannot assume that because you're a liberal, you're well informed. Because you're a liberal, you're artistically inclined. Because you're a liberal, you're culturally oriented. That happens not to be the case. And believe me, it's unfortunate that it paints San Francisco dramatically different and somewhat akin to some of the other places in the country as not well informed and certainly as not liberal.
I read a letter that was sent to the New York Times by 3 members of the school board, and they were defending their position, and they said for 80 years, this has traumatized students. Now, I pointed out at the intro that your daughter is a graduate of that high school. For 80 years, has this been traumatizing students?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, frankly, the mural was an instructional tool for dialogue in my family. We always at dinner discussed what occurred in the school, what occurred in the job of some other place. And to have this particular opportunity, those school board members obviously don't know what they are talking about.
Okay, a naive question. Why in the hell would it cost assuming it were to go away or literally be whitewashed, why the hell would it cost $600,000? I think a couple of buckets of paint, a few buddies, I could knock it out for 100.
If you were going to do it, clearly you could do it with simply a roller and some paint or Sherman Williams or whomever, and it would not cost $600,000. Understand, however, San Francisco is different. We'll have to do an environmental impact report. We will have to make the appropriate kind of safety systems around removing this particular item or whitewashing it in some fashion. We will have to make sure it's union labor who's actually doing this. And then it, of course, has to be appropriately supervised. A combination of all of those things makes it incredibly expensive. Those school board members, if they want to move it, ought to go raise the money themselves or donate it.
You're sounding like a conservative. Final question, where does this all end up?
Well, I suspect that the school board is going to have to seriously reconsider. Because for one time, it's the students who are saying, don't remove the mural. It's not their parents.
So that individual, Willie Brown, he also was the speaker of the one of the houses of the state of California legislature, and he had been a boyfriend of Kamala Harris at one time in years past. They were together, and so the issue comes up as to whether or not this image, that this mural is too traumatizing for students to see. White students, Indian students, African-American students, they go to school and they see George Washington, they see a dead Indian here. They see these killings of people, an oppression of people, a dead Indian. Is this bad? Is this something that we don't want our children seeing, particularly children that come from Indian-American backgrounds, Indian-American families, African-American families? The intention of the person that made this mural was good, right? He wanted to highlight the truth about what happened under George Washington, or how he understood the truth about what happened by people under George Washington. But some are arguing that this is traumatizing students, that this is going to make students, the situation worse rather than better. So do you think that that mural should be covered up, that this Washington mural should be removed? And so please tell me if you strongly agree, neutral, cannot decide, or disagree or strongly disagree. So let me again break you up into groups and breakout rooms, and let me close all the groups, well, I'll just keep you in those groups, okay? So we are in 5 different groups, and so let me ask you, the second person in each group will speak as to where you, so please rejoin the groups, and tell me where your group fits on this scale as to whether or not you think that the mural should be covered up. So please join your groups, rejoin them. And the second person in each group will speak. Let's have the second person. Where do you fit on this scale? Do you think that the Washington mural should be covered up or should be removed? And let me make a vote on this.
So, person
여기에도 좀 애매한 거. Hello, sir.
Hi. Just checking to see if you're talking.
Okay.
We are talking.
애들이 접근할 수 없는 그런 데 두거나 그런 식으로 하면
저 진짜 급하면은 한국말로 파파고에 다 치고
네. 아직.
Okay, so who's going to speak first? Heads, it's 1, 2. And it's tails. So heads, it's 3A. And it's heads. So group 3A. And that is led by, in this exercise, Sung-Un Sang. Where does your group think the...
Our group just agreed it.
Do you think it should be removed? The Washington mural, the painting?
We just think we need, sorry.
Go ahead.
We think the painting should be removed. Because that school is multiracial school, so it's not suitable for that school. And also the intention, am I right? Just a moment. Yeah, the intention for the painting was good, but it can be another painting. Also, it can cause the racial conflicts through the school. So we thought that painting should be removed.
Yeah, Republicans call this cancel culture, that things that have been around for decades are now all of a sudden being canceled, like Robert E. Lee statues, and even this mural, which was meant to be truthful in terms of portraying what was going on, is considered to be what the Republicans talk about too damaging to what they call snowflakes. You know what a snowflake is? In the wintertime, when snow falls, how fragile and delicate is a snowflake, that the Republicans and the Trump supporters claim that leftists portray people as being so sensitive and vulnerable that they're snowflakes, that they will be damaged by seeing or hearing or witnessing images and opinions that they don't like. And I think the school district did agree to cover up these murals, not destroy them, but cover them up. This school board is controversial because during the pandemic last year, the San Francisco School Board also voted to remove the names of certain schools that they are associated with people that they said were supporting or white supremacy, including Abraham Lincoln. Like there were schools named after Abraham Lincoln, the American president during the Civil War, who led the North, who's portrayed as a glorious, honorable, almost divine figure. I'm trying to see if I have a $5 bill I can show you where you see Abraham Lincoln, and I don't think I do have a $5 bill. No, I don't have a $5 bill. But Abraham Lincoln is considered to be the greatest president ever, maybe greater than anyone else, at least as great as Washington. And they removed, they voted to remove Abraham Lincoln's name from one of the schools in San Francisco because he was considered to be somebody who favored white supremacy. He said himself in a speech, Abraham Lincoln, that although he opposes slavery, although he didn't say he opposes slavery. He said that he would allow slavery to exist, but states could not leave the United States because they felt threatened by the American economic development, making slavery obsolete. See, that was the fear that Southern Confederates had, that America was industrializing and slavery was an institution that was useful mostly for agriculture. So as industrialization increased, that slavery was becoming more and more inefficient and more politically threatened by groups that wanted to open up the labor market and to modern wages instead of trying to rely so much of the American economy on enslaved Black people. And so Abraham Lincoln, when he was trying to prevent the start of the American Civil War, said, I am not trying to outlaw slavery. Any state can keep slavery if they want to. I don't think Blacks and white people are equal. No, white people are superior to Black people. And he said these things. And then the war happened anyway. And then he got murdered at the end of the war. And now he's considered to be, a glorious American leader. So the San Francisco School Board during the pandemic voted to remove the names of people like Abraham Lincoln from the schools. So that gives you a sense of how radically compared they are to the rest of the United States to remove not just Southern Confederate names or Southern Confederate leaders, but even Northern leaders like George Washington or who owned slaves, or Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so let me go back to the group and breakout room. And so who will speak first? Heads, it's 1 or 2, and it's tails. So 3B is A, and it is tails. So group 4, problem 4, that is Pyeongchang O. What did your group decide?
Our group decided Washington Bureau should be removed.
Should be removed?
Because we know the intention of this Washington Bureau is, we can understand why they draw this mural, but I think the draw is too offensive for Black people, I guess. Yeah. So this Washington Bureau should be removed. It's our group.
Can I ask you Korean students in Korean schools, do you have pictures or paintings of the crimes that the Japanese committed during the Japanese occupation in your public schools? Do you have pictures or images of the bad things that the Japanese did?
No.
No?
Yes. No.
Interesting. Yeah. In Bulgaria, they don't have pictures of the bad things that the Turks did. They have them in the museums about the bad things the Turks did to the Bulgarians when Bulgaria was part of the Turkish Empire until the middle of the 19th century, until 1870. But the school children will come to the museums, because school children are taken to the museums, and there they see pictures about the terrible things the Turks did. But the pictures were not in the schools themselves. They were in the museums that they set up to send the children to on school trips. Okay, group heads is 1 or 2, and it's tails. So I think that leaves 3B. Group 3B, where do you fit on the scale? (3B) is Ihyun.
Oh, actually, our group didn't decide one opinion. That means our group had 2 opinions, that it should be erased and it should not be erased. First, in the opinion that painting need not to be erased, we said erasing painting does not change history, and it is important to show the past accurately. So it was first our opinion. And the other side, we suggest that it would be better to erase the stimulating part because it could have a mental impact on children. So
Yeah.
we have two opinions.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think about where I would fit on the scale. All right, but let's go now. Okay, so let's flip a coin again, and heads is group 1, and it's tails, so group 2. Where did your group fit on the scale? Group 2 is Kim Chon-soo. Kim Chan-soo, sorry, Kim Chan-soo.
Our group decided that the content of Western murals should not be erased because they are also part of history, and instead, other paintings in the museum should be filled with paintings about the history of racial harmony.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. And group 1, where do you fit on the scale? Group 1 is Songhyun Oh. Songhyun Oh, where do you fit on the scale?
My group didn't decide the opinion, so I would like to say my opinion.
Okay.
I think students can learn from painful history like Auschwitz and prison in Sodaemun. I don't know if the paint is historically, artistically important, but it shows the history. So just school needs to teach students that it has to be never happened again.
Yeah, I think, I swing different ways on this. I think the last time I thought about this, I would disagree that the mural should be removed, but now I think I'm more towards agree. I mean, you're talking about little children that come into the school. Of course, you can always talk about the issue. Yeah, it's like I said, the intentions were good, but in terms of education, I would be a little concerned about having that mural there. But it's an interesting topic because it's difficult. So let me then ask you to vote. So let me go to make sure you can see the screen here, and to vote on whether or not the washing mural should be removed. And oh no, I gotta change this. I don't want it to be anonymous. Oh, it's too late. I shouldn't be anonymous. Let me fix this. Wait a second. I don't want it to be anonymous because I want to give you credit for this. So I can't fix it. Okay, well, go ahead and vote as to whether or not you think so go ahead and vote on this and see, I should, if I make this anonymous, I can't see who participated. So I guess I should have caught that earlier. All right, so all right, so you see most people agree that it should be, well, the biggest group agree that it should be, some can't decide, 5 disagree that it should be removed. Okay. All right. Okay, so in the time remaining, what do we want to do now in the time remaining? I think show you something else here. Oh, the midterm. Did I talk about the midterm? Here's the midterm. Yeah, we talked about the midterm. Okay, we talked about that already. And something about, we were talking about at the beginning of the semester about how there's been a lot of discussion about how, in fact, people's needs and motivations shape their perception and their understanding of the world. And I just wanted to highlight that this has appeared not too a week or two ago, a couple weeks ago in the New York Times by a right conservative go back to that writer. His name is David Brooks, and he was pointing out the findings in the most recent research about how there's really not a separation between reason and emotion, how our needs and our drives and our motivations shape our perceptions and understanding and knowledge. You know, we have this tendency to think about people being rational, irrational, or thinking versus emotion, and they're not separate, right? They're not separate. They're directly related, that how we understand our world is shaped by our perception, our experiences, and that process how we process information to shape information. And so just to show you that this has now reached the level of the mass media, at least in terms of newspapers, highlighting how this distinction we have between what we call rationality and cognition and thought versus emotion and passion and affect is artificial. There's an artificial separation there. And so he was pointing that out, that today they rather look at how our brain, our body, and our environment are all meshed together to create comprehensive mental states. Now there's much more emphasis on how people and groups creatively construct their own realities and live within their own constructions. And he goes on and says, I've often told young people to study genetics. That will clearly be important, but I'm realizing we all need to study this stuff too. Big, exciting changes are afoot. In other words, our DNA shapes our tendencies towards perceiving and understanding the world. Okay, so that's where we'll stop today. And we'll pick this up on Wednesday when we have an in-class debate, okay? Anybody have any questions? If not, I'm going to close the class, and then I'm going to go get my second Pfizer dose. Okay, bye.